Hey everybody, Nick here, and this morning we're going to do a little disassembly and maintenance on this little guy right here. This is the Kizer Toro. So, let's go on ahead and take it apart. This is an interesting knife, specifically in its construction. We'll see why in just a moment here. But start off by popping at the pivot. I bet this needs to come off in this direction, yeah. Okay, using a T10 Torx driver for the pivot here, which is relatively straightforward. And thank you, first of all, to Kizer for sending this little guy along. Now let's see if we can pop these screws out. Yeah, no problem. I'm trying to remember if this guy had any thread locker at all when I first got it. I don't think so. I had done a disassembly very early on just to see what was going on the inside, try and kind of clear it up, lube it up, in preparation to carry it for review. Now I'm doing an official one. So this knife, its sort of claim to fame of any interest here is that this little bar right here. This has a separate second detent bar, basically. You have your lock bar down here, which does have a detent hole and everything. But then on this side, on the other side, it has a different bar containing a different detent ball, which goes into the detent hole on the other side there. And this means that, well, this knife has two detents, effectively. They're both in the same position, so it feels like you've just got one, but it's just a little bit extra stiff. That's it's a fine system. Kizer is not actually the first person to use this system. As far as I'm aware, Ernie Emerson had something very similar on his knives. And, you know, there are some benefits to decoupling the lock bar and the detent, or at least, you know, not having the lock bar be a sole source of detent. The big one, of course, being that you're able to lower the lock bar tension a little bit. Because, you know, if you're trying to use lock bar tension to control detent strength, you need to have a strong lock bar tension. And although there's nothing particularly wrong with strong lock bar tension, it can be a little bit unsatisfying on the open. It's pretty early, guys. I'm doing this before I have to go in for work because, well, you know, might as well get these things filmed. And because I'd like to carry this guy for review. So there you go. But as a result, you wind up with a detent that is twice as strong as you could have otherwise done with a lock bar that is much easier to actually manipulate and move. Not that lock bar tension is generally one of those, you know, big problems. It's not usually a showstopper or anything, but at the same time, you know, look, every little bit helps. And if they're spending time thinking about things like, how can I optimize the lock bar tension? They have found the secret to my heart. Anyways, I'm just going to clear off the bearings here. And again, this isn't super grody. I think I've carried this one day since the original clean out. But every little bit helps, and it helps to put them on even keel. And the knife has continued to be breaking in. One thing I will highlight, though, and you'll be hearing about this again in the review, is take a look at the blade here. This is the detent path for the lock bar. Then on the other side here is the detent path for the detent bar, for lack of a better term. There is not a detent ramp on either side of this. And that's a slight issue. I'm not going to say it's a big issue, but it is definitely a source of some friction, so to speak. Well, not so much friction as just like brick freaking wall. So there you go. Next thing I'll highlight here is that you've got yourself a D-shaped pivot, which means this is not free spinning, but it also means that the pivot needs to be inserted in a very specific orientation. So we need to keep that one in mind. Have the pivot pointing back towards the pocket clip. Here is our stop pin, which is, again, a hollow stop pin. Kizer's been doing this lately. I have no real problem with it. I've shown this off in a couple of other reviews of theirs, and, you know, even structural engineers and whatnot in the comment section. Although everyone's a structural engineer in the comment section, let's be real here. But the ones that I actually believe have said that there shouldn't be much of an issue, the amount of forces involved there. Reminds me of an old comic of two dogs sitting in front of a computer and saying, you know, the wonderful thing about the internet is that on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. Yeah, on the internet, everyone thinks you're a structural engineer. I'm sure that is the bane of structural engineering. Probably not. I suspect they've got bigger banes to worry about. Okay, moving along back at the ranch. I'm going to go ahead and... I'm actually going to go ahead and use a heavier weight nano oil for the detent paths. The reason I'm going to do this is that, and note I said paths plural, because like I said, 2 detents on this guy. That is kind of the big news with this design. But the reason I'm going with the heavier weight here is just to see if I can make it a little easier to close, a little easier. Just, you know, in general, that was way too much lubrication. That would be a decent thing to put on my headstone. Nick Shabazz. That was way too much lubrication. Would absolutely be true. But may I not be making such decisions about headstones and whatnot for many years to come. Well, actually, practically speaking, I will never make decisions about what goes on my headstone. It's kind of not up to me at that point. Won't have very strong opinions. Alrighty, there we go. I guess you could always specify. But no will surprise me. Be hard to do. Anyways, back at the ranch, guys. Hey, look, a bird. A little bit easily distracted this morning, but there we go, and on kicks the heat, because it's finally cooling off here in the tropical paradise that is Michigan. Tropical just feels that way sometimes. All right, now, because I have oriented my pivot in such a way that it's facing properly, this will land properly and be well positioned, which is great. Now we'll go ahead and... Now, I'm sorry, I should highlight this. So this is a full titanium backspacer here as I throw washers everywhere. And it's got these nice little prominences onto which the other scale sets. Nice lanyard hole area. I mean, this is a nicely designed knife. Nicely done overall. So, you know, I should be clear about that. All right, now we just need to get the stop pin in there. Something's going on here. Why do you not want to go back together? My bet is... There we go. Just had things slightly out of alignment here. There we go. Now everything's kind of tensioning back up. Need to get the back onto there as well as the front. I'm going to go back to my T8 driver here and put in my 3 back screws. The 3 screws are perhaps slightly overkill, but that's okay. Go ahead and put a little Loctite on there. There we go. Put that in there. Just hand tight it for, well, it's always hand tight. But just, you know, lower torque at the moment. People always ask me, Nick, why aren't you using a torque wrench? Why aren't you doing this to very strict specifications? Because I don't freaking know. There are no specifications. It's a folding freaking knife, not a aerospace platform. If I were doing the how to disassemble and maintain the freaking space shuttle, well, that would be a slightly different thing. NASA, by the way, I am totally game for that. Just give me some schematics. I will absolutely take one of those guys apart. Mind you, no guarantees. But it's not going to fly again anyways, so what's the concern, right? As long as it ends up space shuttle shaped. Should be okay. Alrighty. Go ahead and drop in your pivot here. Well, not drop in. Very carefully screw in. I'm going to go ahead and remove tension on the lock bar here just to make sure. Uh-oh. This is not great. There we go. The other side there just popped loose. That can happen sometimes if you're applying more force in this direction than you are in this one. There we go. That's popped in there. Okay. So right now it is favoring the show side slightly, the lock side slightly. Oh, no. Need to tighten the pivot down a little. There we go. Now I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and just pop these guys loose real quick. Yeah, that release some of the inattention. Sound like a massage therapist sometimes. What do you do, Nick? Oh, I massage knives and analyze sound waves. I live a charmed existence. There we go. That's much closer to centered. There we go. Now, blade play, vertical or horizontal. Nice and smooth. Beautiful. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed this no bull disassembly of the Kizer Toro, because Toro is Spanish for bull, and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.